Hey folks, welcome to the Houseplant Coach podcast. This is Veronica with Oh Happy Plants, and Drumstick is right here, and so this is going to be a very short one. I just thought of a tip because it's glorious and sunny outside, and we're going on a walk, right? Do you want to go on a walk? Oh boy. So you may hear a bunch of noise from this dog. I'll post a picture of his walk face as my thumbnail for this. But maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should post something more relevant. So anyway, I got an email from a nursery supplier. I like to just kind of stay on top of what's available out there because then I can kind of foresee issues that are incoming. Like if certain types of plants are hitting the market, that means that, maybe all of a sudden everybody's going to be like, oh my God, this plant is losing all of its leaves. Like if it's one of those little ficus bonsais, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So you figured out the watering. That's the first step, but they usually come with a couple of spider mites. I've seen enough of those and we're talking in the hundreds. We're not talking one or two that I've seen with spider mites. When I say that a plant usually comes with spider mites, like I've had people be like, oh, plants aren't more prone to things. Like certain plants aren't more prone to this or that or the other thing. And I'm like, well, actually, scientists disagree with you. So I'm going to go with that. And also just my experience. When I say that this certain plant is prone to spider mites or prone to mealybug or something like that, it's based on experience with thousands of houseplants and, potentially thousands of that individual species. But at least, I don't know what the smallest number of one type of plant I dealt with was. Maybe 20 for the ones we didn't use much. But usually it's a couple hundred minimum, if not thousands. Of a single species that I've seen. And so if you're looking for a plant that usually has zero pests ever, get a freaking snake plant. They're freaking bulletproof. I love those. But snake plants are one type of plant and we like variety, right? Anyway, I digress. So I just was looking at this email from a nursery supplier, and this is not about pests. This is not about anything. And Drumstick is like, Mama, come on. We're already parked at the park. We need to go for a walk. Yeah, that's a very intense stare. The Dobie stare. But anyway, so one really key thing that I learned from my experience in Interiorscape, and this is something I learned from my first manager there, is that if you order a bunch of plants to replace plants in your accounts, like in, March, April, May, these plants have been growing through the winter, and maybe they've been actively growing in this greenhouse for a year or two, but you're getting them right after wintertime. Gosh, this little bird just popped up, looked in the windshield, and then flew back down again. That was really weird. Strange little animal. Sorry, distractions. So you're getting the plants after winter growth, and there can be pros and cons to this. A pro is that it's already used to slightly lower light. And we're talking Florida in the wintertime, or California or Hawaii or wherever they're growing in the wintertime. And so it's not that much less growth, but it's, and it's not that much less light, but it's less than those places in the summertime, slightly. And So that's an advantage, but the disadvantage is if that plant was propagated in like September and then grown through the winter, then it's going to be less vigorous than a plant that was grown through the summer down there with more light, more heat, all of those things. Because if you've listened to this, then you know that heat speeds up photosynthesis to a point, to like, I think 104, 105 degrees, and that's when the basically all the chemicals that are involved in the process, in the photosynthetic process, they start to denature, which basically means fall apart. So basically, photosynthesis starts melting at 104 or 105 degrees. So that's why you want to always vent your greenhouses and, watch those plants in windows. And if you're out east right now and you've got a heat dome over you, make sure you have some of the I mean, if you don't have AC, then do your best to keep your place cool as much as possible. But again, plants can handle a lot. Some people are worried about 90 degrees, and that is not a problem for the majority of our plants. Like a cool weather herb brought inside or something might have an issue with it. But most of our plants are going to be like, fuck yeah, as long as they're getting light to back it up. But honestly, I was rooting Hoyas in my garage at my old house. It was probably 95 degrees in there. I don't think it was insulated at all. There was sheetrock, but no insulation. I think that was the situation. Because if it had been insulated, then it would have stayed much cooler. But, and then the garage door was facing west, so that collected plenty of heat. Uninsulated metal, And so anyway, I was rooting Hoyas in there. I had some lights on. They weren't even proper grow lights, half of them. And they did fine, and so it was relatively low light. It was, it was darker than than a grocery store, which is the thing I compare things to. A grocery store is typically lit at about 40-foot candles, and your shade cloth under shade cloth in California or in Florida on a bright sunny day is going to be like 5,000-foot candles. So a plant moved from there to your normal house lighting, not right in a window, is getting 0.08 or 0.8% of the light that it's used to. So this is what I'm talking about when I say that buying a plant in the springtime can be beneficial, because then you're moving it from really high light, but not super, super intense high light. You're moving it from really high light to low light, because your house is never going to be as bright, usually. I mean, unless you live in California. But here in the Pacific Northwest, or even a few feet away from a window, and even window glass will cut the amount of available light. I was measuring at my old place. I think it was 9 or 10 a.m. East sunlight was streaming in through the window, so it was direct sun, and people are like, oh, bright indirect means plants can't have light falling right on them. Bright indirect refers to, once again, outside in the middle of the day in California on a baking hot day in the summer. That's what bright direct is. So bright indirect means you throw up some 70% shade cloth up there, and it cuts the light down to a couple 1,000-foot candles instead of 10,000 or more. And so in the Pacific Northwest, morning light through an east-facing window, even afternoon light through a west window, you're not going to see much more than, maybe 4,000-foot candles through a window, through glass. And then right outside, so I pressed it up to the glass, and it was a double-pane window, and it was 4,000-foot candles. And then I moved the light meter right outside and put it in the same exact spot, facing the same direction against the glass, and it was 6,000-foot candles. So that shaved off just the window alone. Hey, comment. Thank you. The window alone shaved off a third of the light available. And so that's something to really pay attention to if you think your plants are getting too much sun. This is why I really recommend those light meters. I have one linked on my website. I think it's ohhappyplants.com/recommendations. And I'm working on installing an app in my Shopify so you can just see the products themselves, right in my catalog, and then it takes you to Amazon to buy them. And then I just get an affiliate kickback, and basically your purchase, I think it's 3% of the purchase price without any increase to you, supports this podcast and all the work that I do. So, and then also, if you click on one of my links, I mention this all the time, so sorry if you've heard this before. If you click on a link that a small business has posted that's an affiliate link, and then you buy anything else, as long as you add it to the cart after you click their link, and then you check out within 24 hours, it gives 3% of your purchase to that small business. So even if it's your normal whatever you buy from Amazon, they'll give the small business 3%. And so if you want to pull a little money out of the corporate coffers and put it into the hands of small business owners that are doing good work in the world and providing jobs and, actually supporting this economy, that is one way to do it. Paying their taxes and things like that. That's one way to disrupt the system just a tiny smidge without any kind of extra cost to you, except for a little bit of time to go and find a link of your favorite small business and follow that before you make your Amazon purchases. And because we all use the freaking app, we don't really do that. So I think this is mostly for desktop behavior, shopping behavior. But anyway, back to the whole thing of buying plants. So the plants that you're going to see in all the box stores, and honestly in most of the boutiques and stuff, unless they're relying on, I mean, even if they are relying on plants from local greenhouses, like up here in the Seattle area, we have some greenhouses where they propagate and grow plants, and we have plenty that are dealers, essentially. They bring in giant trucks of plants from Florida, California, Hawaii, wherever, containers from Hawaii, and then they keep them in their greenhouse and resell them, and they're trying to move those plants through as fast as possible. So no matter where you get your plants, the summer growing season is going to yield stronger plants, and also plants that are more used to the high light and the heat and everything. And so they're going to potentially have more of an adaptation to your home. So you need to pay a little more attention to all of the acclimation sorts of things, adjusting the water. Like, when you put a new aglaonema into your house, it's going to go through water like crazy. It's still in high growth mode, and it takes a while for it to slow down, for it to realize, oh, your whole situation has changed. Like if it were in the jungle, maybe another tree grew up over it. But that's a gradual process, so it would have time to slow down. It's not like, maybe a hurricane came through and threw a bunch of trees down basically on top of it. That would be kind of the same as being moved into your house in terms of the light reduction. And so, or like a tree fell over and all of a sudden it's in full shade, like deep shade. But even deep shade outside is, sometimes can be as bright as, a few feet from a window and inside of our house. Anyway, so like, I really encourage light meters. Don't overestimate the light that you have available for your plants, because chances are you are overestimating it. And that's why we don't see great growth. And that's why when you find a spot for a plant that's in really good light, you will see better growth. And if you move it, you really need to pay attention. Like if you move it any amount of space or, distance from a window, or you adjust the light at all. Sorry, there's a train coming through. Hang on. Okay, I shut the windows. So you're going to hear train noises, but hopefully you can still hear me. So anyway, if you adjust the light at all, you're going to see changes in the amount of water the plant needs. You're going to see changes in growth. You're going to potentially see change, like if you take a calathea and you put it in lower light, it may develop a fungal infection. And then a lot of people are like, oh, it's the humidity. And it's really not. It's the fact that plants will fight off fungal infections with hormones that they can't produce if they aren't getting enough food, essentially. If your immune system is dealing with malnourishment, if you are going through some kind of phase of malnutrition, your immune system is not going to be able to fight off illnesses, right? And it's the same with plants. If their little immune system isn't well supported by, all of the things they need, which means good fertilizer too, but also, and calcium is a really big component there. Go listen to one of the episodes on calatheas if you need, or alocasias. It's kind of the same sorts of fussiness for those two. But alocasias are a little different. But if you don't give them what they need, which includes enough light so they can photosynthesize enough to make enough sugar to be able to survive and for all of their little processes to go well, they are going to be more impacted by the fungus that's already present on their leaves. It's going to be able to get in and cause a problem. We all have staph bacteria and stuff on our skin right now as we speak, as we sit here. We all have all sorts of things all over us that aren't causing problems because the good bacteria is in balance and keeping it in check. And then also our immune systems are well supported. And when that goes all off, then those little things can pop back up and be like, hey, I'm going to fuck with you. And that's what That's what they do with calatheas all the time. And I see it all the time when people bring home beautiful calatheas and, you know, maybe they treat the mite issue right away because they typically come with a couple of mites and all it takes is a few weeks for those to turn into a couple thousand. So, like, we're talking ridiculous growth on those guys. So if they treat the mite issue and then they put their light, they don't pay attention to light, they don't have a light meter, and they put their calathea in low light because they heard it was a low light plant. Low light, according to nursery growers, means 200-foot candles, and that's 5 times as bright as a grocery store, according to the national standards for lighting in grocery stores. So, like, go to Safeway and ask yourself if your calathea is in light that's 5 times that bright. And it's not obvious to the human eye what 5 times is. Once we can see, we can differentiate between, oh, this light is hurting my eyes, and, like, this is really intense, like the sun's in my eyes right now. And we can differentiate between that and between I can't read anymore because it's too fucking dark. You know, like, there's not a lot of nuance in our, like, visual perception of the brightness of light in terms of being able to measure it with our eyeballs. And so that's why I recommend light meters. They're like $30. Go get yourself one. It will change your plant game. And it's also going to make you realize you need grow lights. So I have my recommendations for those up as well. And all the grow lights I've tested with things like orchids, fussy plants that don't want to bloom without really good light, or fussy plants that just don't want to grow without good light, like ficuses really want good light. They want sunlight. Natural light is a thing for those and for orchids. And so these grow lights, it's the Barina strips and then Sansi grow bulbs. Those ones have been my favorite in terms of the balance between cost and efficacy. So, okay, what's next? Oh, sorry. This was supposed to be short. Here we are 17 minutes later, and my truck is like making clunky noises at me. Yeah, it's weird. Drumstick is still staring at me being like, what the fuck, Mom? Okay. So if you purchase, the whole gist of this blurb is if you purchase a plant after a full summer growing season, it is going to be more vigorous, more healthy. It's going to have stronger roots typically, as long as, you know, it was watered enough and all of that. If it was cared for well, you can tell, obviously. I'm going to do some videos on plants that have had issues. I'll put together some information on that for you guys. I'm going to start, I'm actively working towards getting back into making videos and putting out more informative stuff because I kept it up somewhat after Sean died, and I am very much needing to get back into that because that's why I started this whole company, is to share good information, and I really want to help folks more. So yeah, I'll make some videos on like what it looks like when a plant wasn't cared for well and what the different things mean. Because you can tell if a Dracaena has been wilty in the past. Usually it sticks, like the curliness of the leaves. It's a certain pattern of the leaves. You can tell if one has never ever wilted, which means it's going to be a healthier plant. And you can tell if one has wilted in the past 2 years, which can really severely impact the root system and the growth and lead to root rot because root hairs die and all of that. I'm not going to get into it. But anyway, so back to... Reel the brain back in, Veronica. Back to the whole pros and cons. Buying a plant after summer, it's going to have more acclimation to do when moving into your house. Make sure you put your new plants in really bright light. Because so here's a baby plant, right? It grows up in a California nursery and it's getting way, way bright light, perfect care, regular pest and fungal treatments and all of that. And then it's shoved into a fucking box or into a sleeve and then put in a truck, and it might be shipped through the country. Like sometimes they use refrigerator trucks and then the plants come up cold damaged, and it's like, really, assholes? Are we kidding right now? Do we know plants at all? And then sometimes they just shove them in a normal container truck and then they cook. And so you're getting this plant shipped up. If it's been a hot August or whatever, and you pick this plant out at a grocery store, it may be already showing signs of little bits of cookery. You know, you'll see what I mean. You'll eventually, if you look at enough plants, you'll see what I mean in grocery stores when they have a whole section of plants that are like shitty and half dead. and they like just came off the truck, it's like, yeah, that's the problem. It's either heat or it's cold, or it's shipping them dry, which they'll often do to cut down on the weight of the truck and cut down on fuel use. And that's, I think that would be the nursery doing that on purpose, but honestly, plants should be watered before they go in those trucks, at least a bit, at least a few days before. Because then they're not soggy, but then they're not totally dry and cooking in the trucks. Anyway, so they get shoved in this dark truck. It's way too hot for them potentially, or too cold. The temperature is not well controlled. And then they go into a grocery store where, again, it's lit at 40-foot candles, and a low light plant for it to grow and be healthy, 200-foot candles is the minimum for a low light plant. That's why the whole idea that Sansevieриas are low light plants, it's like, okay, well, what's 200-foot candles? Because chances are that ain't it in terms of healthy, strong growth. I'm not talking about your floppy Sansevieria that's all falling over and you can't get the sticks to stand up. That is insufficient light right there. Drought can play an impact, or play a role too. But anyway, so when you take those plants from the grocery store into your house, you're just kind of continuing that process of fucking with them since they left their nursery. And they're like, what in the hell? And plants are slow to adapt because they don't walk around. They don't grow feet, so they're slower to adapt to new situations. They have a whole process where their little planty system has to send out the hormones. Like when a plant experiences drought, right at the root tip, there are hormones created that send out to the rest of the plant and tell the rest of the plant, hey, hunker down, it's the dry season. And then the rest of the plant will start doing things like shifting its water gathering attention to the lowest leaves, and that's called firing leaves. They pull the water and the nutrients in from those low leaves because they're like, well, fuck, the roots aren't doing the job, so we're going to take the lowest leaves because they're the least biologically useful. They're the furthest from the sun. They might be covered up by other leaves. They're older, so they're not going to work quite as well because they're not brand new, right? And they're going to take everything they can from those leaves and push it into either into new growth, or as Hoyas do, they just stop growing altogether and maintain. And that's honestly why I love Hoyas. I feel like if I had like a plant that was my corollary, I would be like, yeah, it's a Hoya, because they do not die. They may lose a few lower leaves, but they will not fucking die. And in terms welcome to Veronica, I'm stubborn as fuck. Hoyas too, right? Drumstick, yeah, as long as they don't get like root rot. And I'm talking about fungal root rot. I have not seen a Hoya die from overwatering. Like, not entirely. They can rot out. But usually fungal root rot is the big culprit for those, especially if you get a new Hoya and its roots are all shit. That happens so much, especially imports, my God. Anyway, 23 minutes later on this quick podcast. So in the springtime, if you get a plant, it's going to be easier to acclimate it, but you're going to see less vigorous growth. So I honestly prefer to get the plants and just deal with the acclimation process, because a stronger, healthier, bigger plant is always my preference, both because it's easier, I think, to acclimate, because you're not dealing with trying to acclimate a plant with a shitty little tiny root system, because all it was doing was growing in the shade, and getting far less light, and it was cooler, and, it's not really in a growth phase, and now it's moved to your house and it's like, what the fuck? And it's trying to acclimate with a less strong system. So I like to buy plants later in the year if I can, especially if you're doing like a big project where you're buying a bunch of tropical plants for something. Like if you're, working in the interior scape field, it was buying a bunch of plants for like offices and replacing new plants and stuff like that. And if you're buying plants in your house, we all know you're just going to, like, if there's a cute plant, you're going to get it. So just keep in mind, if you are like, okay, I'm going to save my plant buying budget for one big push, then going and getting all your interior plants in the fall could be advantageous. That's the whole message. And also, I'm not going to stop you. So, like, go get yourself a fucking houseplant. You deserve it. Anyway, that's the message today. Okay, I'm going to go for a walk with this sweet puppy. And you guys are going to have an amazing day, right? And pay attention. for new fun things coming out. I have been gearing up slowly for ages. I think my house is actually pretty much moved into now, so I think I can change my focus to other things. Oh, Drumstick saw a cat. Cats are nice, and cats are leave it. Drumstick. You remember? That's a baby. We leave it. This dog and his prey drive, I tell you. Anyway, so, yeah. Watch for new awesome stuff. I'm working on it. I'm sorry I've been so absent lately. It's been a whole couple of years, but my health is pretty much back. I'm still dealing with some tiredness, and I am, still working through processing grief and everything, but I'm mostly functional. I seem to be returning to the land of the living more and more every day, and it's good. Shit's getting pretty solid, and so I'm ready to start really putting some more energy into the whole education stuff, because I don't want anybody to lose plants, honestly. I want everybody to have more success than I ever have. And some of that is sheer, scheduling out your plant care. Not because plants need water on a schedule. Again, check the water, but put it in your fucking calendar. If you're anything like me, if you appreciate the way my brain bounces around like fucking crazy, then you may have ADHD. And just saying. And you may want to set an alarm for every Monday, go do your plant watering, because otherwise you might be like me also, in the sense that you're like, has it been 3 weeks or 6 weeks since I watered this plant last? Yeah, don't do that. Don't be me. Okay. Yeah, and if you need soil or any other products, ohhappyplants.shop. I am cranking out the soil, and it's fabulous. I have a couple new blends. I don't know if I mentioned Anthurium Delirium. It's one specifically for anthuriums. If you switch to this blend, really pay attention to the watering, because it doesn't hold as much water. I know that a lot of people keep their anthuriums in humidity cabinets and stuff like that, so that would be a really good soil for those. And if you need to add something to it to make it hold more water, I have the Drink Up mix, or I have Thirst Trap. You can mix it 50-50 if you have your anthuriums in a really hot and relatively dry area. Or if you just live in the desert and it's 5% humidity and you're in Arizona and you're like, fuck, this is ridiculous, I need something else, just add some of the Drink Up mix to it. And you can add 50-50. You can add more than 50-50 if you really need to, but just try it out to see and then adjust from there. Because I don't want you watering every day, unless you love it, unless that's all you want to do with your life and you never want to leave your house. But I want you to have a bigger life than that. So anyway, onward. Have a fabulous day, guys. Bye.